They may have laid some gloves on him, but I got to tell you, there was no knockout punch. If you're watching any of the coverage of last night's Republican debate, or you're reading it this morning, you keep hearing how both Cruz and Rubio really smacked Trump around on the stage, and that because of that, this is the first time Donald Trump has really been on his heels and backpedaling in one of these events. I have to tell you, I watched the replay of it this morning, and my impression is, well, yes, they did go after him. But on the other hand, my gut feeling is it's a little too late. And number two, I think he's very adept at getting back on his feet. I think there's just this tremendous belief in establishment media and among the leadership of the Republican Party and the so-called conservative movement in this country that everything that happens to Trump in these situations, that's the end. They're still in that state of denial. They still don't understand that he's going to be walking away with the Republican Party nomination. You know how bad things are in the Republican Party? Within the last 48 hours, there have been death wishes issued by some leading Republicans and conservatives against both not only Donald Trump but Ted Cruz, the latest being from Lindsey Graham, yesterday speaking at the National Press Club where he was warming up with all of the liberals in the crowd. And he said that if someone were to murder Ted Cruz on the floor of the Senate and there was a trial in the Senate, no one would be found guilty. So there's a wish on his part that someone would obviously do that. He can deny that and say it's just a joke and it's the truth and I'm just exaggerating the fact that nobody likes him. But tell you what, most Republicans, if they said that about a Democrat, you wouldn't hear the end of it. There would be calls for apologies and resignations. Heck, who was it? A senator from Mississippi some years ago showed up at a birthday party when Senator Strom Thurmond turned 100 years old. And the senator made a quick comment, just an old man's birthday party, saying, well, you know, Strom ran for president once, and I guess if he had won, this country would be a lot better off. Well, Strom, he'd run for president all right in 1948 as a Dixiecrat, states' rights candidate. Media just had a fit, forcing the resignation of a sitting U.S. senator from Mississippi over that. And yet, because Lindsey Graham is talking about killing a conservative Republican, that's okay. Because media, they go along with that. Sure, that's a great idea. And then Rush Limbaugh calls him Ross Douthat. I think the actual pronunciation of the columnist at the New York Times, and he's a conservative, or so he says he is. Ross, I think it's Douthat. He is a columnist, longtime columnist and writer at the New York Times, one of the few conservatives on the staff there. He had made a joke the other day online. In fact, he did a tweet where he was suggesting that someone shoot Donald Trump, that Trump be assassinated. Now he's just joking. But this is how the elites are so desperate now. They're recruiting people to go out and kill Trump and Cruz. This shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, because you know when someone is threatening their free lunch, the fact that these people have been getting away with something akin to murder, analogous to murder, when it comes to our culture for the last 20, 30 years, shipping your jobs overseas, and they've been making huge profits on all of this. When suddenly people come along and say, enough, well, they're going to put a stop to that. If you ever saw the movie Bulworth, you have a U.S. senator who goes off the deep end, and he just starts telling the truth everywhere he goes, played by Warren Beatty. It gets to the point where the establishment has him killed. Yes, that's fiction. Now we're starting to see suggestions from people in the establishment to get rid of some of the candidates this year in the very same manner. 8:11, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And people are weighing in from all over the world. Vicente Fox, a former Coca-Cola executive who became the president of Mexico. Mexico, you only serve one term and then you're out. I think it's 6 years. So he's a past president of Mexico, was appearing on a program with a communist reporter on a Spanish-speaking network. But they were talking in English, and Fox said, let Trump go blank his own wall. In other words, a really bad word. And so Trump was asked about this last night because apparently the roaming gnome, that's a fellow by the name of, Wolf Blitzer over at CNN, thinks that this will be what dooms Trump next, because Americans will say, if a Sunday Fox said that, golly gee, we might not have to vote for Trump whatsoever. No, because I really respect those former Mexican presidents and their third world leadership. And this is Donald Trump's response as he's being questioned by the Roman gnome.
How are you going to make them pay for the wall?
I will, and the wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me. It's got 10 feet taller. I saw him make the statement. I saw him use the word that he used. I can only tell you, if I would have used even half of that word, it would have been national scandal. This guy used a filthy, disgusting word on television, and he should be ashamed of himself, and he should apologize, okay? Number one. Number two, we have a trade deficit with Mexico of $58 billion a year, and that doesn't include all the drugs that are pouring across and destroying our country. We're going to make them pay for that wall. Now, the wall is $10 billion to $12 billion if I do it. If these guys do it, it'll end up costing $200 billion. But the wall is 10 to 12 billion. You need 1,000 miles. The Great Wall of China, built 2,000 years ago, 2,000 is 13,000 miles. We need 1,000 because we have a lot of natural barriers. We can do it for 10 to 12, and it's a real wall. This is a wall that's a heck of a lot higher than the ceiling you're looking at.
Some of the conservatives are pronouncing Trump's campaign is over now because during the course of last night's debate, Cruz did ask him, he said, have you ever recommended a single-payer national health care system? And he said, no. And he said, I've talked a little bit about where it's done in other countries, and sometimes it's been successful. October of last year, Trump did say that he would support such a system in this country during an interview on 60 Minutes. So now people are saying Trump just overtly lied at last night's debate. Here's a question for you. Do you think that this is in any way going to harm Trump when it comes to his supporters? Of course not. Because they hear what he says about things like Mexico, and that's what truly disgusts them, and he is just talking their language. So even though a lot of them may also like Cruz, it's not going to have any traction. And again, you've got people writing at the National Review. They had the great big February issue where 22 conservatives, gang of 22, all urged other people not to vote for Donald Trump and said, because we said so. I have this today from Peggy Noonan, columnist at the Wall Street Journal, former speechwriter for Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Page 3 of her column, there are the protected and the unprotected. The protected make public policy. The unprotected live in it. The unprotected are starting to push back. She says, I'd like to call the protected the elite to load the rhetorical dice, but let's stick with the protected. They are figures in government, politics, and media. They live in nice neighborhoods, safe ones. Their families function. Their kids go to good schools. They've got some money. All of these things tend to isolate them. They're insulated from many of the effects of their own decisions. One issue obviously roiling the U.S. and Western Europe is immigration. If you're an unprotected American, one with limited resources and negligible access to power, you have absorbed some lessons from the past 20 years' experience of illegal immigration. You know the Democrats won't protect you and the Republicans won't help you. It was good for the protected, but the unprotected watched and saw. They realized the protected were not looking out for them, and they inferred that they were not looking out for the country either. Now, this is a long, lengthy column, 6 pages in total if you print it out on a computer, 6 full pages. And as I was reading through this today, I thought that she had really nailed it. The elites in this country have gotten away with this. Even Donald Trump admitted, of course, he was hiring people to work on his projects illegally during the course of last night's debate. If anything will hurt him, it's because he says Americans won't do those jobs. But we do know some Americans who would like to just sit around and guzzle beer and watch TV and not have to do anything. Maybe he is right about that. He also pointed out the other guys who are criticizing him have never hired anybody. Touché. 8:16, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We've got 29. You can reach our program this morning at 736-0300, 736-0300. And by the way, People for Pets, they're coming by in a few minutes, and we're going to spend much of the hour today talking about unwanted animals in this community. Animals that are abused or abandoned or just, the fact that we've got many of them who are just breeding in the back alleys. we'll spend a lot of time. But in the next hour, we're going to get back on this topic because I have a guest coming up after 9 o'clock news. Robert Vandervoort is the executive director of Pro English. He is one of the most important lobbyists in Washington fighting to make English the official language of the United States. And there is a bill right now in the House of Representatives that would do just that. And we're increasingly seeing more sponsors sign on. You know, it may just be that when you call up a federal office in the future, you won't have to press 1, 2, 3, or 4 to get to English. And that also annoys a great many people here in the United States. Immigrants came here for many, many years, and, they learned the language and they were proud of that. Today, they'd all like to self-segregate. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Good morning.
Yes, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yes. One thing I've noticed about Mr. Trump is when he's asked about how he would take care of these companies that are going to Mexico from America, all I hear from him is that he's going to raise the tariffs and he's going to tax the crap out of them. Well, instead of doing that, why doesn't he correct what is wrong in America and what the environmentalists and what things, the taxes and all of the restrictions and the things that have been placed on them?
Well, do you believe that Ford Motor Company is teetering under the weight of U.S. taxes?
I think.
Do you have a percentage of what they actually pay?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now I'll buy the regulatory problems that businesses have in this country. That's certainly true. But I'll tell you what, just the threat that he would charge them to sell their products here because this is still the biggest consumer market in the world, he might be able to leverage them at least to bring some of those jobs back.
Oh, okay. And then, but the other point on that is, instead of actually just us charging them that, Ford's going to turn right around and they're going to stick that on the sticker price, so we're going to end up paying it anyway.
That's a potentially good point.
So I just think that what I would like to hear is, instead of adding more charge, more tax, more penalty, why don't you fix what the problem is, why they're leaving the country?
And I thank you for the call. Of course, the other aspect we've got to mention is you go to some of these other countries. You go to Malaysia and Singapore and China. And in China, they don't have a problem with providing slave labor for these big companies. And if they can get away with paying someone $1 a day versus, what was it, the benefits that one of the automobile companies, when it went under, it was about ready to go under it was General Motors, I believe, back in about 2008, with the benefit package that workers were getting along with their hourly pay, the average was about $83 per hour. I mean, it was ridiculous. Now, the automobile companies also turned around and gave that to them when times were good. Somebody has to put a little bit more common sense back into the whole program. We've got the folks from People for Pets on the way on the show this morning. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on KLIX.